Hi, this is Jim Cunningham, and today we're going to talk about strategic and financial estate choices at different stages in life. And so we're going to take a real macro view of the decades that are traditionally of retirement decades of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. This is information. I'm a lawyer. This is not legal advice, so don't watch this and go do a bunch of stuff. This really is an area. This is not a do-it-yourself project. You do need experts. If you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and click the subscribe button. There's also a share button. So if you see some information here that you think may be valuable for other people, please, you have my permission and I encourage you to share it. I'm an attorney. I'm Jim Cunningham. We've got offices throughout the state of California, and I am coming to you today from Northern California from our San Rafael office. And these are the lawyers in our firm. And all we do in our firm is trust and estate matters and tax planning matters, all those things that are financial well-being issues for our clients. I am the soon to be a former managing partner of CunninghamLegal here in my last few days. I've got 25 years experience as an attorney, 27. We do serve clients in other states as well. We do have attorneys who are licensed in Missouri, Texas, Virginia, Washington State, and Washington, D.C., as well as California. I'm a certified specialist in estate planning and a real estate broker, securities and insurance license, and a pilot. And so I also have a book, second edition of Savvy Estate Planning. You can go to our website and you can order that through our website. Just go to CunninghamLegal.com. And that's a great, a lot of stories in there. And it helps you unpack this really complex topic of estate planning, you know, setting up trusts, how to deal with kids who are responsible, how to deal with grown children who are less responsible, as we say. And so let's talk about it. At 60, 70, and 80, I've met with clients over the last over 25 years, and I've seen patterns. And one of the really cool things, and I was reading about this as I was getting ready for today, one of the really cool things is when I started practicing law, people who were 70 seemed kind of old to me. And it's not because I was 25 when I started practicing. But one thing I have found in the research is people who are the Gen X and baby boomers, frankly, are taking care of themselves a lot better. So, you know, if you think about your grandparents and you look at pictures of your grandparents when they were 50, you might be like, wow, they were kind of old. But a 50-year-old today looks completely different than a 50-year-old, you know, decades ago. So I think that's one encouraging thing. I think it's realistic to think about a healthy and productive retirement through ages 60, 70, and 80. Yes, into your 90s, but we're going to focus on the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I'm in my early 50s. And so what happened, you know, when you hit that mark of 50, you go, wow, you know, the runway's getting shorter and I need to start thinking about this stuff. So we're going to talk a little bit for those of you who are age 50. And at 60, I think this is a really interesting time because it's the time when many people can financially retire. Many people choose not to, okay? And what I see, the pattern, one pattern is many times a woman will retire right around age 60, but a man won't. You know, men many times have their career, certainly if you're a professional, you have who you are and what you do is really wrapped up into, defines you as a human being. That it can be true for women, but I think less so. And I would say in your 60s, it is a huge opportunity for tax planning, especially if you're not working. So if you're not having any earned income in your 60s and your income drops, there is a lot of things that you can do to minimize overall taxes when you take a decades-long approach, and certainly a multi-generational approach as well. And it's all about keeping more for yourself and your loved ones and less going to taxes. And I will tell you, we have a broad spectrum of clients, how they feel about taxes. Some people would rather poke themselves in the eye with a sharp stick than pay a nickel in taxes. Other people have a more sanguine view of taxes. So if that's you, I mean, this is really a gut check for you. How do you feel about paying taxes? Does it, you know, drive you nuts? But really, that's a very personal decision. We'll also talk about Social Security, when to take Social Security, and we'll kind of go through that. And at age 70, this is really where clients, we really start talking about RMDs, required minimum distributions. Most of our clients have a 401k, an IRA. So we'll talk about that. And age 80, what I see is this is that transition where the kids become the parents and the parents become the kids in many instances. So the years when in your 80s is really when you start looking at your, you know, who's going to take care of you if you can't take care of yourself. What sort of assistance will you need with finances and personal and medical issues? And again, a decades-long approach, I think, is the best approach, not just a year over year. And, you know, a big part of our practice is tax planning. And we take a decades-long view on tax planning, not just, okay, how can we minimize taxes this year? We're also thinking about in future years. And I think that's kind of a new way of thinking for many people. But for us, of course, it's something we do every day. So we're going to start with a poll. And what I'd like to do is, as we go through the materials here, I would like to take a poll. So if you're watching this on a computer and you can click, if this has appeared on your screen, just mark your age. It'll help me kind of gauge who's watching this. And if you, of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can't use the poll, but we got some numbers coming in here, and we've got most people are responding. Thank you very much. And so we're hitting that magic Pareto principle, 80-20, getting past 80. Okay, well, let's see who. Look at this. We've got a big slug of people. We got some people under 50, a lot of people kind of evenly, but kind of weighing in the 60s. And I'm really glad if you're watching this and you're in your 60s, this is really helpful information for you. So we'll go ahead and share those results. And you can see there that we've got, most people in the 60s and 70s, but we got some people in the 50s. Okay, so at 50, I do want to tee up the 60s and 70s and 80s, because we do need to talk about the 50s. Retirement's closer than you think. And for those of you who are under 50, I meet with people who make a lot of money in their 20s and they're out there. And it's very hard for them to think about retirement, because I think in my 20s, it's like, I'm going to live forever, right? I'm going to have this young, healthy body forever, right? But if you're under 50, you really need to be thinking about retirement, because there's this time value of money. The longer your money is invested, the more you'll have. But when you hit your 50s, traditionally, now this is not always the case, but traditionally you're hitting your peak income years. So many people in the corporate world are in leadership positions, senior vice president positions, director positions, and this is where you tend to make more money. You can also put away more money into a 401k, and that's if you're making $27,000, you can put away $27,000 as a per person. So if you're a working couple, then you can put away $54,000. And for many people in their 50s, the big gorilla in the room, the big elephant in the room is, how on earth are we going to pay $200,000 for this kid's college education? You've got 3 kids at $600,000. That's a lot of money, and that's at a state school. So the big focus is getting kids through college. And one thing that we do recommend is that you meet with a certified financial planner. CFP is the acronym, and you'll see this throughout our materials here. But do meet with a certified financial planner and talk about how you're going to save for college. One thing that we do see many clients do, and this may be new for you if you're a grandparent, is the grandparent sets up the 529. Now, this has several benefits. One is it reduces the value of the estate for the grandparents. So if you're in a taxable situation, that can help. And that money's set aside for the grandchild. And that is more beneficial when it comes to FAFSA, which is the mandatory student aid application that all college students make out. It's more beneficial if the grandparents have contributed to the 529 than the parents, because there's a period of time where that's excluded. Something to know, which is outside of the scope of what we're talking about today, the FAFSA rules are changing, and that's just around the corner. That is for the school year of 2023 to 2024. And as we record this, we're in the spring of 2022. So that's next year, okay? That's not this fall, but that's next fall. And there's a simplified version on its way that is a more generous version of the FAFSA. So if you've got financing college on your brain, you're definitely going to want to pay attention to that. And it's really good to choose a certified financial planner. So let's look at contributing to a 401k. Hal earns $27,000 a year. Wanda, his wife, earns $227,000 a year. Okay, so Hal's working at a job that he loves, and he doesn't make much money, but that's okay because Wanda's making money. So their combined income's pretty significant, right? Well, if they contribute $27,000 each, which means Hal doesn't take anything home, but that's okay because Wanda's also earning, $200,000 to take home. Over a 10-year period, they're going to be able to save $540,000, and it's pre-tax. So what this does is this saves them about $180,000 in tax. So this is a tax deferral strategy and saving them a significant amount of money. And so the true out-of-pocket's about $360,000, and this does not include the return on the 401k as well. So I would say some good habits in your 50s: focus on your career, maximize your income. Okay, these are your savings years. You might have to be paying for college and also beefing up your retirement savings. and also reducing spending and paying down debt. I know this can be hard because if you say, I'm making all this money, I want to go do fun stuff. I get that. But also think about the long term. How long do you want to work? Because the less you save, the longer you might have to work, right? Do you see where I'm going with this is, if you could otherwise retire at 65, if you spend a lot of money in your 50s, you might have to work until you're 70. Well, those are really 5 precious years in your 60s where you're able to be more physically active than you will be in your 70s. So it's something to be think about. Educate yourself. I love YouTube. We're a big YouTube content provider. I think we live in this amazing age where we can just look at anything and learn so much. I mean, gosh, think about when we had to go to the library and learn all this stuff. So there's just so much out there. And check out our YouTube page. We have over 100 videos where we take deep dives into topics, many of which we go a lot deeper than what we're talking about here. Again, catch up on your underfunded 401k. You can put in more into your 401k when you're over 50. And I would say avoid speculation. It's one thing to speculate when you're younger because you've got a longer time horizon, but really avoid speculation. And what I mean by that is, crypto is kind of this new thing du jour, like the latest of the day. Some people say it's speculation, others don't. You have to make your own call on that. But really, I would say avoid speculation because you really do need to not only get a return on your investment, but you need a return of your investment as well. And review your plan at least annually. I would say it's time, if you're in your 50s, to sit down and say, how long do I want to work? What's our lifestyle going to be like? And start mapping it out and put it on an Excel spreadsheet. We did that. My wife and I did this earlier this year. And we're kind of figuring out, okay, well, how much do we really need to save? How much longer do we really want to work? And that's something you should be doing. This is not a DIY project. This is not a do-it-yourself project. You absolutely need an A-team, not necessarily this A-team, which is the A-team from the 80s. But the A-team I'm talking about is what is also referred to as a 3-legged stool, right? That's your lawyer, your CPA, your financial advisor. Those are the really key people. And I will tell you, for many clients, it's hard to find these people. It's hard to find a CPA who will do a 1040, an individual tax return for you. If you're a business owner, it's a little bit different. But if you're a W-2 earner, it can be very hard to find competent professionals, right? And again, CPAs are older, lawyers are older, people who have experience in this, they're aging out and they're retiring. So it can be hard to find the professionals. What should you be doing estate-wise? If you don't have a revocable living trust set up, take a look at it. For the vast majority of people, a will-centered plan is not enough. We have a whole a series of webinars on our YouTube page, but this includes a living trust. If you have a living trust, you still have a will. So you have a will that leaves everything to the trust. And then you have a durable power of attorney for property to handle your IRAs and your 401ks and your annuities and your life insurance and all those things that are not in your trust. So trust is like a bucket. You put your house, your stocks, your bonds, your mutual funds in that trust. You hold on to the handle as trustee. And some things do not go in that trust bucket. Those would be IRAs, annuities, 401ks. Those are handled by the durable power of attorney. Also, advanced healthcare directive. We're hopefully coming out of COVID, at least in the United States. And if you don't have this in place, it can make it harder for your family to help you out, right? Because you can't even go to hospitals still. That's just how it is. And the HIPAA authorization gives medical authorization. A HIPAA authorization allows other people to have access to your medical information so that they can help make medical decisions. And another one is figure out, it may be whoever draws the short straw. If you have siblings, I happen to be an only child, but figure out who's going to care for your parents. Because I will tell you, I meet with a lot of people in their 50s and they're taking care of aging parents, right? And if you're the one who might be the person who needs care, you might also want to pick out which child is going to take the laboring oar on caring for you. And typically it's one child who's kind of doing most of the work. And I would also recommend stay married. I will tell you, I've been married 30 years this year. And one of the challenges in staying married is, life changes, people change, the empty nesters, sometimes that's a good thing and sometimes that's not so good thing, but it's better to stay married because if you get divorced, you will be poorer. Okay. So staying married is good, a good financial move apart from all the other stuff. But that's just another thing that I've seen over the years. I think people who have divorced, by and large, I'm making a sweeping generalization, have a tougher time financially. And here's a screenshot of our YouTube page. You can see we have it broken down with topics, and 01 is the estate planning basics. So if you want to learn about the estate planning basics, I would encourage you to take a look at our YouTube page. All right, so let's talk about, now we're going to hit the 60s. And the older you get, the better you feel about your own health. Now, look at this. People who rate their health as good, very good, or excellent by age, the older you are, people are like, I feel better. I think this is maybe human optimism, and maybe they do feel better. Who knows? But that's just the data. So we do have one question here, and I will see in the Q&A. If you have a question, put it in the Q&A. The pros and cons of a special needs trust for a relative who has issues that he does not recognize. Yeah, special needs trust. We did a webinar last week. Daniel Van Slyke did. That's a tough one. A special needs trust is typically designed for somebody who is on SSI, supplemental security income. If you're on SSDI, which is social security disability income, you typically do not need a special needs trust. That's what we would call a continuing dole it out trust. So it depends on the type of special needs, but generally speaking, if you have been working at some point in your adult life, you are on SSDI. If you have never worked at any point in your life, then you're on SSI, broadly speaking. Okay. So now you're 60. Now what? When can you retire? When should you retire? Now, when you should retire is a very complex question, right? It's going to be personal. It's going to be financial. So this is something that you really need to put some thought into. And also, again, not a do-it-yourself project. You want to get together with your A-team. Again, women retire more frequently and earlier than men. I've just seen this. We call in my legal profession, we call it being a lifer, right? Are you a lifer? People literally die at their desk, right? And what will you do after you stop working? That's a whole other question. Like, what the heck am I going to do? If you've got grandkids and you're part of their lives, for many people, that is a big part of what they're doing. Now, for some of our clients, their grandkids are close. And sometimes they're not, because California is a very expensive place to live. And sometimes people move away. One thing we do help clients with is they say, yeah, my kids can't afford to live in California. I have enough money to help them stay. How do I do that? We help clients through that almost every day. How do I do it in a way that's not going to spoil my kids, that's going to be protected from divorce? How do I do this in a way so that I can actually see my grandkids instead of having to fly to Tennessee? So what will you do after you stop working? Travel. I went on a vacation last month, the first real vacation since COVID hit. It was wonderful. If you have not been on a vacation, a real vacation, it's just great. Okay. In your 60s, you have more energy. My dad is going to be 78 this year. And what he said is something I've noticed is I had a lot more energy when I was in my 60s and in my 70s. I just don't, I don't have the energy. We took an 8-hour flight, and it is kind of a pain to go through the airport and go through all the screenings and the COVID tests and all the stuff you have to do. So, and I was wondering, if I were older, would I want to be doing this? So if you have the ability to travel and you've got the money and you've got the health, I think that's something that probably weighs for a lot of people on what to do. Enrolling in Medicare, you do that before your 65th birthday, and you typically get correspondence from Medicare on that, but you do need to enroll before your 65th birthday. And again, in your 60s, it's a huge opportunity for tax planning. And now we start looking at Social Security, but I do want to show you, I can't help it, but go on a trip, right? Isn't this beautiful? What a great place. So we do have a couple of questions here. Let's see. Love stay married. As a realtor, I see some messy and surprise stuff during and after divorce. Just sharing. Thank you, Anita. And if I still have money left in 529 plans and the kids already graduated from college, any suggestions? Yeah, that can just kind of roll over and be used for other family members. So we have a whole webinar on that covers 529s, and it's how to finance education. It's a whole webinar on our YouTube page. I would encourage you to look at that. All right, so when to take Social Security? So this is a really interesting question. For those of you, and most of the people who are watching this, and it may be you, right, are in your 60s. And so, all right, when should you take Social Security? You can collect it as early as 62, but your benefit is permanently reduced. So it's something to understand. The longer you wait, the more you get. Okay? The longer you wait to take Social Security, the more you get, and it increases your monthly benefit. And doing a break-even analysis is helpful, and you can like take it down to the specific month. And this is where you work with a certified financial planner. You can take it down to the absolute month where you should be taking Social Security. It has to jive. It has to mesh with your overall plan of when you're going to retire, how much income you need, what your risk profile is in terms of investment risk profile. That's a whole math calculation. And this is something that should not be done, by you individually. I mean, even if you are a certified financial planner, I'd go talk to somebody else. So Abraham Lincoln said, if you represent yourself, you have a fool for a client. I don't represent myself when I need a lawyer. I go to other lawyers, right? Because, I'm a human and I'm not really thinking as clinically as another professional. Spouses can get benefits at 62 based on the partner's work record. An ex-spouse, if you've been married 10 years, you can actually collect on your ex-spouse's Social Security. A lot of people don't know that. And a certified financial advisor, certified financial planner can help when to take Social Security. Social Security is not designed to provide all retirement income. It's designed to provide about 40%. So it pays to get as much as you can out of Social Security. And again, there's no hard and fast rule. It's individually tailored. And your benefits are based on your earnings while working. So if you are a business owner and in your 50s, you look at the last 10 years of your earnings. So you may want to consider taking the maximum or incurring the maximum payroll tax. And again, this is a math function because you want to be able to collect the maximum Social Security benefit. So here are the full retirement ages. If you're born between 43 and 54, it's 66. It's 67 for those born in 1960 or later. And it's somewhere in the middle if you're born between 55 and 59. I would anticipate if you're younger, if you're in your 30s and 40s, that number probably will be higher as time goes by, quite frankly, because there simply won't be enough workers to pay into the Social Security system. And you probably heard that on the news. It reduces your benefit by about 6.67% a year for up to 3 years, and then 5% a year thereafter if you take it at 62. So looking at an example, Hal's full benefit, full retirement age, full benefit amount is $2,000. And if he retires at 66, he gets the 2,000. If he takes the Social Security at 62, he only gets 1,500. So by waiting, you see that you get more. Okay, you see where I'm going with that. Now, if his full retirement benefit is at 66 is 2,000, if he delays Social Security until 70, he's going to get almost 8% a year, and that's going to be $2,640. So you can see here, if he takes it at 62, it's 1,500. If he waits till age 70, it's 2,600. So more than $1,000 more a month. So what's right for you? Longevity. And this is, kind of morbid, but if the break even's around 78 and you don't think you're going to live till 78, I think that's a factor. If you think you're going to live to be 115, that's another factor. And these are all factors that you need to discuss with your certified financial planner. Next question is, do you need the monthly benefit? Do you need, air quotes, right? And even if you need the income, it might make more sense to live off savings, okay? And it's really a math puzzle. It has to do with longevity. It has to do with, many people inherit in their 60s and 70s, we see. And an inheritance, for those of you who are leaving an inheritance, what we're seeing increasingly is that inheritance is a source of retirement income. So what you're creating in terms of multi-generational wealth, you're creating it for you, but you're also creating it for your kids, right? If you're leaving it to your kids. So maybe talk about with your certified financial planner about how you should be investing your funds. So this is not only for you, but it's also for your kids, and that can drive some investment decisions. I do want to talk briefly about health. The median age for a cancer diagnosis across the board is 66. So if you're in your 60s, if you're 66, that means half of cases occur before 66, half occur after. And the mortality rates have fallen by about 32%. And so your survival rate is, more than 2/3 of the people who are diagnosed with cancer don't die of cancer. They might die with it. They might die without it, but they're not dying because of it. My grandmother died when she was 38 of lung cancer in the 50s. So it does affect people. Debt. Let's talk briefly about debt. I would say most successful retirements, and I put that in air quotes or quotes, because what is a successful retirement? I would say with this aspect, people not being stressed about money, right? Because if you're retired and stressed about money, that is not good. It is not a good place to be in. most successful retirements either have no, or what I would say manageable debt, right? You've got some source of income to pay the debt. It's harder to get by on a fixed income with debt. Now, we are in an inflationary cycle right now. And, I think inflation's right now running at 8%. And what I'm reading is there are two camps. One camp says we need to increase interest rates above the inflation rate. So we may be going back to 10% interest rates very soon to get that 8% inflation rate back down. So if you lived through the early 80s, this might be a repeat of the early 80s where interest rates went way up. So, should you pay off your mortgage? I would say, I'm making a sweeping generalization. Women want to pay the mortgage off, men don't. Okay, men, I'm fine with the mortgage. I want to hold on to the cash. Many women want the house paid off, but more people are retiring with a mortgage than before. So you can see there 22% of people in 2001 had a mortgage, and then about 30% still had mortgages in 2011. Delaying your retirement a couple of years can help you accumulate more wealth, maybe pay off some debt. And the whole point of that is to eliminate financial stress. And I know this is like not exactly financial, this is more personal, but being stressed out over money is not fun. I've been there. It stinks. If you're watching this, you've probably been there at some point in your life, and it's better not to have it than it is to have it. But I would gauge your feelings on this. So the takeaway from this is, are you going to be stressed about money when you retire or not? And that should factor in, the stress factor should factor into when you retire. What about part-time retirement or part-time employment, or marginally employed, as some people say? I would talk to your employer about that. And it's important to clarify your role, because you may be taking a different role, not necessarily higher or lower on the status or org chart, but it would be a different role, but you need some clarity on that. Obviously, in any role in any organization, clarity is important. And maybe you can shift some responsibilities to employees. And maybe you might have to change a position where you can work fewer hours. So, some people can't work fewer hours. Being a part-time lawyer is very hard because clients don't want to wait 2 weeks when you're off wherever you are. Okay. This is really important. Don't get paid less for the same work. All right. I would really push back on an employer who wants to just pay you less. All right, you're working half time, so I'm going to pay you a third, and you're still doing the same work. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. The other thing is healthcare. So if you're pre-65, if you're not a full-time employee, you may not get health insurance coverage. So, or you might have to pay a higher portion of your premium. If you don't qualify for a company plan, you can ask for a reimbursement to get an Affordable Care Act plan. So that's sort of the Obamacare. Part-time retirement. How can you supplement your income? You might take money out of your 401k. You can do that after age 59 and a half without a 10% penalty. So that's one way to supplement your income, is starting early withdrawal. So when I mentioned delaying taking Social Security and living off savings, this is part of that. It might make sense to delay taking Social Security. It might make sense to take some money out of your 401k. Again, you need your A team. You need that three-legged stool coming together to make sure that you figure the numbers out. And really, this is it's really a math problem. And that's the certified financial planner is best suited for that. If you want to continue contributing to your retirement account, find out if you're eligible, because sometimes there's a 1,000-hour requirement. So if you're working 900 hours, you might not be able to contribute to the 401k unless you're a legacy employee. And then sometimes you can work less. And don't forget that employer match, folks. That is free money. Especially if you're younger, in our law firm, we have a 401k match. Not everyone takes it. And I am astounded. I don't know why they wouldn't want extra money, but some people say, I simply can't afford to contribute to my 401k. My response is, go work at Starbucks on the weekends, go do something else, get a second part-time job to get more money. It sounds easy, but that way you get the match from your employer because it's free money. It's nuts. I don't know why people don't take that. What I mean by match is you contribute to your 401k and then the employer makes a matching cut. So if you put $1, the employer puts $1, right? That's what I'm talking about. What about a retirement budget? So the data shows most people need about 75% of pre-retirement income to cover your living expenses. So you think about your income, and I'm assuming your income kind of matches your expenses. And once you're retired, that number is about 75% of what that is. So if you're making $10,000 a month, you would need $7,500 a month in retirement, more or less. Now, things that can make it higher or lower are healthcare. And I would say healthcare can be a pretty big expenditure. Housing is another one. So, some people in California have a house that they paid a small amount for that's worth a lot of money. And if they sold that house, they could move to a different location and have a housing that is a lower nominal price. But to get there, you have to sell that house and you may end up paying capital gains tax. Well, we help a lot of clients avoid that capital gains tax bill on the sale of a home. There are a lot of things that you can do to mitigate that. But many people do move in retirement. Many people stay in retirement where they're at. So it depends. We've got a whole bunch of videos on Prop 19 that passed in the fall of 2020. And that allows you, if you're 55 and over, to take your low Prop 13 taxes from your current home and move them to another home. Okay. You have to have had either bought or sold a home after April 1, 2021. So if you did that, you're going to want to look into that. If you recently bought a home and sold another home, you might be able to get a drop in your property tax bill. You might not even know this, frankly, because the forms literally were released a few months ago. So we didn't even have the form to submit to the county assessor to have your property tax bill cut down. So if you're 55 and over and you've moved your primary residence within California after April 1 of 2021, you may be entitled to lower property taxes. So it's something to pay attention to. Also a travel budget. When my wife and I are planning a few trips and we hired a travel agent and we said, this is our budget and make it work. So I'm not one to go online and book my stuff because I'd rather talk to somebody and have that person book it for us, but come up with a budget. So if you're going to travel, you can say, hey, we're going to spend $20,000 a year, whatever the number is. And we're going to do 4 trips and this is our budget and work and stay within that budget. And factors for higher or lower income is whether you're working in retirement. Some people work in retirement, others don't. And, work can be your hobby that, gets you a few $100s a month, and that may be enough to retire earlier. And so all that kind of helps you to determine when you can retire, how much money you're going to need in retirement, and do that with a certified financial planner. Very, very important. In your 60s, if you're still working, so let's just say you say, well, I'm not going to retire till I'm 70. You can put at $27,000 a year into your 401k, and the employer oftentimes matches. So it does make sense to continue contributing to your retirement accounts in your 60s. So if you contribute $12,000 a year for 5 years, you'll have another $60,000, and that's an extra $3,000 a year, assuming a 20-year retirement, or $250 a month. So if you're still working and you put that money away, you're going to have more retirement income. You see how this works. It's kind of like filling up a gas tank. We kind of estimate that retirement's going to be a certain period of years. It's kind of like saying, well, I'm going to go on a trip and I think it'll be a certain number of miles. You need to have enough gas in the tank to take that trip. Retirement's a little tougher because you don't know how long you're going to live. You certainly don't want to outlive your money. So, but don't forget the employer matching. It's essentially free money is what it is. Okay, we have some questions here. Will you send the slides of the presentation? Can you capture that, Kimberly? Anita says, if one takes Social Security at 62 and now is over 70 and a half, can you earn as much as you want without being penalized? Good. I'm not sure. Anita, it's a good question. If you are taking your deceased spouse's Social Security, does it make a difference between when you take the full retirement age or at 70? Will it stay the same after full retirement age? Anonymous, I know enough about Social Security to tell you to talk to an expert. I am not an expert in Social Security benefits. I would definitely reach out. The person you want to reach out to is a certified financial planner. We often recommend Ascent Wealth Management. You can go ahead and reach out to them. How do you find CFPs who do Social Security? That would be Ascent Wealth Management. We've done a lot of webinars with them. I would encourage you to take a look at the financial planning chapter in our YouTube page, and they have their contact information there as well. My husband's taking Social Security. Can I collect half of his Social Security until I reach age 70? I think that's file and suspend. I think that's gone, but I would check with the Social Security expert. How did you find your travel agent? Hard to find these days. You know what, Kimberly, maybe we should do a webinar on travel. with the travel agent, but she's in Florida. I've never met her. I've never even talked to her. My wife handles all that. So, but I'd be happy to, that's actually a pretty good topic for a webinar. Okay. So shifting your assets when you're using your A team. So you're in your 60s, the runway, right? Your runway just before you take off, it's getting shorter. You're getting toward the end of the runway and you're ready to take off for your successful retirement. It's, you know, it's climbing the mountain. In some respects, climbing a hill is easier than going down a hill, right? So if you're on a hike and you hike up this hill, it's hard, but going down a hill is different. It's hard in its own way, and it's different because you don't want to stumble and you don't want to fall, right? So, you know, I read a lot on this. Some people say in your first 2 or 3 years of retirement, you should be entirely in cash. You should not be invested in the market. And if you retired in 2008, yeah, you probably would have wanted to have been in all cash. Okay. Who knows what's going to happen? You know, the Fed is right now has increased, has indicated that they're going to increase the Fed funds rate, right? The interest rates, and they're going to use a sledgehammer, meaning it's going to go up pretty fast. They're also going to be selling a lot of the government bonds that are on the balance sheet of the Fed. And so that is going to cause interest rates also to go up. So I'm not going to tell you what to do. You really do. This is an individual thing. You need to meet with your A team and get your A team together and sit down and say, listen, I'm really worried. I'm getting ready to retire. I don't want to be invested and have a drawdown in the market of 30%. And now I'm going to outlive my money. This is why you need experts. You know, if you just blindly invest in the S&P 500, I'm telling you, you are taking excessive risk, because if you look at the risk you're taking to get the return, there are more effective ways of getting maybe not the same return, but you're also mitigating a tremendous amount of risk. And so this is the one thing that people don't really think about when we've had year over year of growth, that the markets sometimes go down, and they go down significantly. And there's a thing called pucker factor. Okay. And yes, it does refer to your sphincter, which is a body part. And it's a military slang phrase that it describes the level of stress or the adrenaline response to a crisis. And what it's talking about is the individual's response to the crisis. So it's just saying there's a crisis and different people respond differently. If you have an overly high pucker factor, meaning you're panicky, you might be like the person that I remember. It was in 2008 when the market hit its nadir, its lowest point. And if you look at a graph, it's the bottom of the V. A good friend of mine called me, who's a financial advisor, and he said, Jim, I've got an elderly client. She wants to sell everything. I'm trying to talk her off the ledge. Can I just not sell? And I said, no, if she's telling you to sell, you have to sell. So her pucker factor was really high. She panicked, right? And guess what happened? The market recovered. It bounced back. She lost out. And I think the market was in the low 6,000s. And now, of course, it's over 30,000. So I think you can't ignore this. And this is why you need expert help, because I see people, they get emotional, they get panicky, and they make bad choices. All right. So here's a graphic of the S&P 500 going back to 1980. So the blue is the calendar return. And then the white boxes are what are called intra-year drawdowns. So this was the lowest point in the market. I mean, look at 1987. Do you remember 1987? Right. And then you look at the early 90s and then the mid 90s. There was a lot of volatility in the market. And of course, you had 2004, and then just some really bad years in there. And if you have a high pucker factor, you might panic. You know, when the market's drawn down, you might panic and sell everything. And there's it's like 1% of days account for 80% of the increase in the stock market or something like that. So you have these really big swings, these really big bounces back. So it's something to be mindful of. So when you're investing and going up that hill on that hike of saving, when you retire, you hit the peak, and now you don't want to outlive your money. You really need to pay attention to this, because this is a really big mistake I see with do-it-yourselfers. And I think it's a bad idea to be a do-it-yourselfer if you have a very high pucker factor. Okay. So the average drawdown is 14%. So you have $1 million on average during the year, that's going to go down to 860,000. You might say, I got to stop the bleeding. My $1 million is down to 860. I got to sell. It's, it's something where you need a team. So you're either prepared for it, mentally prepared for it, or you're just not experiencing that drawdown. If it makes you so nervous, you might be willing to accept a lower overall rate of return. And the trade-off is less risk, right? To where your money doesn't go down as much, or maybe never goes down, depending on the type of financial structure you use. Okay, let's talk about age 70. Before we do, we got a few questions here. Okay, and we got Costco travel is best if you have a membership. This is what Evelyn says. It's more than worth the membership fee. Absolutely. So I think that's a great one. I just don't. Thank you, Evelyn, for that. But Costco, yeah, great. In fact, on our trip, we met some people who booked through Costco. So RMD strategies. So what are we talking about? When you reach 72, you have to withdraw from your non-Roth IRA. And if you're not working, your 401k, if you're still working, you do not have an RMD from your 401k. And then 403B and TSA, those are nonprofit and government employees. Collectively, we refer to these as IRAs. So when I use the term IRA, it's just shorthand. I'm also including 401k. The Secure Act in 2019 pushed that age from 70 and a half to 72. Why they came up with 70 and a half is idiotic to me. It's ridiculous. 72 is a lot clearer. Secure Act 2 may push this out to 75. So that's something that it looks like will pass Congress, and it looks like the president will sign it, and that will push minimum distributions out to age 75. If you fail to take the distribution, the required minimum distribution, there is a 50% excise tax. So it's a big penalty. Technically, the distributions do not have to be from each IRA. So if you have 5 IRAs, you don't have to take a minimum distribution from each IRA, but in practice, that's what happens. ITRW in the real world. Most people just don't want to make a mistake and don't want to miscalculate. So changes have been made to the required beginning date for IRAs, again, pushed out to 72. The required beginning date is the April 1st after the year you reach age 72. If you turn age 72 and you wait until the year that you turn 73 and you have your minimum distribution April 1, you have another minimum distribution December 31. So you have 2 that year. So many people, if you're going to be 72 at any time in the future, think about taking your minimum distribution. Again, after meeting with your CPA and your attorney and your financial advisor, think about taking that minimum distribution the year that you are 72, right? Because if you double up in your required minimum distributions, unless it's a Roth, which you don't have a minimum distribution, you get 2, which means it's more income that's taxable. So you really need to pay attention to this. And if you turn 70 and a half after December 31, 2019, then the new rules apply to you. And in 2022, we switched to new tables. So if you have a self-directed IRA and you're calculating your own minimum distributions, you absolutely need help. Most of our clients don't have that, but we do have new tables coming out in 2022. I would say this is simple for some people, and it's more complex for other clients, especially if you have alternative investments in an IRA when you have minimum distributions. AAA also has a travel program. Thank you. Anita says, if you have info on the 2022 overpayment, underpayment, 4% penalty, can you share some info? Yeah, I'm not sure what you're talking about there. So look at a Roth conversion. So there's let's see, this is kind of a big topic, but we did talk about this in another video. Here's what a Roth conversion is. On your IRA, you haven't paid the taxes yet, right? So if you've done a 401k in your employer, you're contributing pre-tax dollars, your employer matches, you're not paying taxes on that money. Well, the cows come home when you're 72, because now you have to start taking money out of your retirement account, and it's called that required minimum distribution. Again, if it's a Roth, there are no required minimum distributions. Many of our clients do what we call a mega Roth conversion. You have $1 million in a Roth account, in an IRA, and you convert that to a Roth. Yes, you have to. Yes, that $1 million is taxable as income. There are many things that you can do to offset that income tax bill, that income tax liability. There are many things you can do to deploy other capital in a way to reduce that overall income tax liability. And again, this is purely a function of math, meaning sit down with your certified financial advisor, CPA, and lawyer and figure out, all right, I've got $1 million IRA. Should I do 500,000 this year, or 700,000, or 340,000, or 122,000, or whatever the number is? And a lot of this is tax bracket arbitrage, meaning you don't want to go into a higher tax bracket. And again, it's a longer multi-decade view of your investments. And I will tell you, I think it's hard to do right now because the law is changing on this. So we've kind of halted or pumped the brakes on Roth conversions, at least in April of 2022, because there may be new legislation coming out that caps the amount of Roth conversion you can do based on your earned income. And so the cap is about 400,000. If you have over 400,000 in earned income, you're going to be limited on your Roth conversion. So we're taking a wait and see approach, at least right now, on the Roth conversions. Right now, there's no limit, but there could be a limit in the future. And I would really encourage you to take a look at our YouTube page. And that's where we have a lot of content on Roth conversions and IRAs and all of those things that are RMD related. So as you can see here is a screenshot, and that's our section 04, which is IRAs, 401ks, and retirement accounts. I really encourage you to take a look at that and poke around. So COVID's over, time to travel, see the world, do it while you're physically able to do it. You're not as spry as you were in your 60s, but in your 80s, I got to tell you, I was on vacation. I saw a lot of people in their 60s. I saw some people in their 70s. I think I saw a couple of couples in their 80s. So, take it as you will, but take care of yourself. It's not only the quality of the quantity of life, but the quality of your life. And so this is about mindfulness, about your health, about your nutrition. I live in California, I live in Northern California, and the quality of the food is very high. Okay. That is not the same situation in all parts of the world and all parts of the United States. We can certainly choose to eat organic and fresh and all this and take care of ourselves and be active. And again, this is what I mentioned early on is, if you look at a picture of your grandparents when they were 50 and you look at a picture of yourself when you're 50, you're like, wow, I look pretty good compared to them because they look really old because that was a long time ago, right? People aren't smoking as much. They're taking care of themselves. And so, longevity, you can live an active, healthy life, but it does require an element of self-care. So let's talk about asset protection for kids' inheritance. So this is kind of interesting. When I meet with clients in their 70s and 80s, their kids, many times they've gotten married. They've gone through college and they've gotten married. And some of my clients love their son-in-law or daughter-in-law, and others are like, I don't know about that, right? Other people say, I don't think that marriage is going to last. Or if I die and my son or daughter inherits, the last thing I want is that inheritance to go to my son-in-law or my daughter-in-law. And you may not vocalize this with your children, but you may feel it. And it's something, it's a gut check. And there are things that you can do to protect what you have earned, what you've struggled over your lifetime to accumulate. You can protect that for your children. You can protect that for your grandchildren in a way that's not flagging it, and in a way that's not obvious that there's issues going on. And so we write these estate plans in a way where when your child receives the inheritance, it's protected. It's designed to be protected from a divorce. It's designed to be protected from creditors, and it ensures that when your child dies, many times that money goes to the grandkids and does not go to your child's surviving spouse. And this is kind of, you reach an age and you say, well, you talk to your spouse, you go, well, if I die, would you get remarried? And if you die, my wife says, there's no way. It took me 30 years to train you. I'm not remarrying. There's no way. It's not going to happen. She's like, yeah, but you'd get remarried right away. So again, who knows, right? This is case specific. Another one is if your kids are wealthier than you are. So many of our clients, they say, yeah, my kid started working at this tech firm and now they're super wealthy. And there's some really cool things that you can do to leverage tax benefits for your children. And again, this is thinking about wealth in a multi-generational time frame, not just you, maybe just not your kids. So it used to be that, probate avoidance, we need to avoid probate. Probate's bad. Now these numbers they're getting so big that really these assets do need protection. And then your grandchildren in your 70s, you may be involved with grandchildren if you have them, if you're blessed to have them. but they may be going to college. They may be starting their career. Again, my dad's in his late 70s and my son, 26, he's starting his career. And you might want to help them out, right? If you're living in California or other parts of the country, it's very expensive. Housing is very expensive. I see many, I would say the majority of my clients help their kids buy a house. Okay. And again, we mentioned that earlier on, and that's something we can help you we can help you design in a way that reduces risk and doesn't spoil the kids. What about grandbabies? Great grandbabies in your 70s. A lot of my 70-year-olds, they're in the thick with grandkids. They love it. I can't wait till I have grandkids. I'm looking forward to being able to play with them and then give them back, get them all sugared up and give them back. Okay, so let's talk about your 80s. Your 80s, what I see in my research and what I see in my practice is an increased likelihood of greater healthcare costs. I mean, that's kind of it, right? That's the big issue for many people in their 80s. Many people are starting to run out of money too, which is another issue, and we'll talk about that. But your medical spending tends to be highest in your 80s, and if you make it into your 90s, Medicare covers many expenses, but not all expenses. And again, we have some information in like picking the right place to live on our YouTube page, and what it's like to live in an assisted living facility, and how to choose an assisted living facility. Out-of-pocket expenses include co-payments and deductibles and long-term care. So long-term care is a big issue. My father-in-law is going to turn 90 this month, and he's living in assisted living. Fortunately, he's retired military. It's a very generous pension. Thank you, taxpayers. And he is able to make ends meet. And we do have this in on our webpage. So incapacity, long-term care, powers of attorney. And we talk about hiring caregivers. So if you're the child, if you're the 50-something hiring a caregiver for your parents in their 80s, you can be deemed the employer in California. So if you tell them what food to make, when to come and go, you can have personal liability. So it's very important, if you're on the cusp or if you have hired caregivers, very important to watch that one video here on hiring a caregiver, because there's a significant liability. This is a fertile ground for plaintiffs' lawyers, for labor law attorneys. So late retirement, many people, again, move to independent or assisted living. Some people move to a nursing home. We have materials on that on our YouTube page. The cost range, what I see for clients, sometimes it's $3,500, sometimes it's $5,000, sometimes it's 10, 15. I've got one client who's paying $45,000 a month, wealthy guy, paying $45,000 a month for his two in-laws on the peninsula in San Francisco Bay Area. Very nice place. So again, there's a range, and some outlive their money, unfortunately. And sometimes you have to live with a family member. It's frequent where you might have a widow or widower who's making $1,500 a year in Social Security, and they just simply can't afford to live on their own. So it's never too late to reassess your retirement savings, even in your 80s. And really, is it adequate to see you through? One thing, and I'm not promoting reverse mortgage, one thing to know is that there is an option of a reverse mortgage. Now, what that means is you're able to access either a lump sum of money or a stream of income from the equity in your home without selling the home. So you could sell your home and you might have to pay capital gains taxes, but where are you going to live? You'll have money. So the reverse mortgage is designed to solve that puzzle, to solve that problem, where you can borrow against your home and get a stream of income to supplement your needs, and not sell the home and still live there. You still have to pay the property taxes. You still have to pay the maintenance or homeowners association or whatever you might have. You still have to pay all that. But it does give you a stream of income. Yes, you do have to repay the money, and it is a reverse mortgage, meaning instead of you paying the mortgage company pays you. And yes, there is interest and cost associated with that, but it is a solution for many people that need that extra income. And we see this more clients in their 80s and their 90s. They do turn to a reverse mortgage, and part of this late retirement is thinking what you want to leave to other people, and charitable bequests, because some people, they do want to leave money to charity and their kids. And if you're 80s, the people who are inheriting, they might be well off. They might have a fully funded retirement, and that's maybe not a bad idea to talk to the people that are going to be inheriting and say, look, I'd really like to help out this charity. Just have a discussion with your family. So that can be constructive. So here's a checklist for if you're 80. Review your estate plan. very important to have a current estate plan. I would say clean up amendments to your living trust. And amendments are very problematic. They're very confusing when it comes time to administer your trust. So what that means is use your trust. So if you have a living trust, Amendment 1 that changes some provisions, Amendment 2 that revokes Amendment 1 and makes some other changes to your trust, and then Amendment 3 that revokes Amendment 2, and then Amendment 4 that makes some changes to Amendment 3, and then Amendment 5 that brings back Amendment 1 and makes some other changes in the trust. You can see where I'm going with this. It is very confusing for lawyers, and that's a problem. So what we typically do is we clean up that trust that with all those amendments, and we typically do what's called a restatement of trust, which is a really big amendment that changes all the terms of the prior amendments and the trust so that you have a single document that's clear, that's unambiguous, and really is easier on your loved ones to help you when you administer, which is the legal term, which means use the living trust when you're either incapacitated or you passed away. Please make sure your powers of attorney are updated. The durable power of attorney for property, we see institutions, if these are more than 1 year old, we see institutions dishonor them. They say, we're not going to accept them. If you use a uniform statutory form power of attorney, a uniform statutory form power of attorney, the court must award legal fees if an institution does not honor that uniform statutory form power of attorney. So in our firm, we now use the uniform statutory form power of attorney and our own drafted power of attorney. We actually have 2 powers of attorney. Okay. So we use that uniform statutory form power of attorney when we need that hammer on the institution to say, hey, you need to honor this. And this is a problem that comes up frequently in our firm in practice. And if you talk to any estate planning firm, any attorney with any experience, they're going to tell you, yeah, this is a real problem. So I would say make sure that you're not trying to rely on a power of attorney that's 20 years old or 10 or 5 years old. It may not be too late to get long-term care insurance. You can get it up to age 85. If you're 85, it is too late. But, and we have a whole webinar on long-term care insurance. So if you're thinking, yeah, I want to get this for my parents or I want to get this for myself, there's an old way of doing it and a new way. The old way is paying monthly. A new way is a single lump sum that you pay and you get a benefit. And if you don't use that long-term care coverage, your heirs actually inherit the money that you paid for the premium. So it's kind of a good deal all around. So I guess the moral of the story is get an A team. I guess I'm the guy with the cigar. That's me. So get your A team together, your attorney, CPA, financial advisor, and really rely on them. And I will tell you, it's getting harder and harder to find a CPA for people who are not in business. So wealthy retired people, it's hard to find a CPA. Well, folks, that brings us to the end. And we have a few questions here that I will try and get to. Here's a screenshot of our main YouTube page. Go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube page. Very informative. When you subscribe, it pops up. You'll be notified when we have a new video posted, and review us on Google. So Anonymous asks, can you buy residential property in another state on a revocable trust name when the revocable trust is created in the state you're living? Generally, yes. Living trusts are valid in all 50 states. Anonymous asks, is it better to buy a home in a revocable trust name and give it to your child, or to help the child buy a home in their name if the child's going to live in the home? So there are a couple ways we can do that, Anonymous. You can lend money to the child for the down payment and take back a note secured by deed of trust, okay? So that you have lent the money. That gives some protection for you, and it gives some protection for your kid, and that's many times how we craft that. So you lend the money, there are other ways to do it. You can put it in a trust, or you can buy the whole property, but that's probably, Kim, something we should do a webinar, which is helping a child buy a house. Okay, overpayment, underpayment question was on the quarterly tax payments. Oh, may a penalty be coming? Yeah, you need to pay your taxes on time. Just because you haven't filed your return, your taxes are still due. Ray asks, there is some who say that the reverse mortgage quite often has a clause that say the house is your main residence, and if you're single or have to go to a nursing home, it's no longer your residence, and the reverse mortgage gets activated, so you have to sell. Yeah, Ray, there is, unfortunately, a reverse mortgage requires you to stay in the home. I have yet to see any reverse mortgage company or bank foreclose on a property. No, I haven't seen it. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but they like those reverse mortgages because they're getting interest. I'm not saying that I would rely on that, but you're absolutely right. You do have to stay in the home. Is it better to redo the revocable trust than adding amendments to a revocable trust? Is it the same as a restated trust? Yeah. So There's a living trust, and an amendment changes this word and that word, little changes. A restatement restates, it erases everything and gives you a whole brand new trust in a single document. So you can think of a restatement of trust as a big fat daddy amendment that amends all the terms of the trust, so you don't have to look at any prior iterations of the trust. How frequently do you update the power of attorney and healthcare directive? I would say probably every 3 years, frankly, is probably safe. As usual, great program. Well, thank you, Linda. Ray says, can he talk a little about QLAC for those who cannot get long-term care? I'm not sure what that acronym is. When you help a child by lending, do you adjust toward yearly gift amount or get the loans paid back? Yeah, great, anonymous, great question. So when you make an intrafamily loan, there has to be an imputed interest. It's depending on the term of the loan. It's somewhere between 1% and change and 2% and change. But that's something we work on a case-by-case basis, and those numbers actually change every month. So that's something where we would work with our clients and advise you appropriately. It's not a big, it's not a whole lot of legal work. It's just knowing what to do. And then we typically work with the escrow company and tell them, okay, write this note for this interest rate if the loan closes on this particular date. So, but those numbers change. Linda says, with the restatement, do we need to re-record deeds on real property? No, Linda. So what a living trust is a lot like having an address on a property, and a restatement tears the house down and builds a new house. You still have the same address, so you don't have to refund your new restatement. Who will draft the loan doc? Typically, if it's a purchase, the loan documents, the note and the deed of trust is done on the escrow level. Again, California, we use escrow companies. Lawyers don't use them, but certainly our firm could do that. But typically it's bundled with the escrow company. All right, well, thank you. That's been great to see everyone again. And what point do you recommend a restatement of trust? 1, 2, or 3 amendments? Well, it depends, but 1 or 2, it depends on what the amendments say. But after 2, it gets kind of confusing. So it's been great to see you, and please subscribe to our YouTube page.